They said pause. And yes, we paused, but only long enough to gather ourselves. They said rebuild, but what we're doing is more than fixing and our spirits back to life. From the halls that carry our history to the hearts that carry our hope. This is us rising again together. This is what leadership looks like here. Teachers preparing rooms with care, principals greeting families at the door, staff making sure every detail is right because our students deserve our very best. The lights are Check, check. Mic check. One, two. Check, check. Mic check. One, two. This is what success looks like here: effort, joy, curiosity, and growth, all shining through our students in everything they do. Every student, every day, together like never before. When our community faces a storm, we don't wait to help, we show up. That's who we are. From staff delivering meals and supplies, to teachers checking in on students' well being, to counselors helping kids talk through hard days. Support is what we do. And even when the emergency passes, we don't stop. Every day in every school, you'll see adults making sure students feel safe, encouraged, and ready to learn. Families feel it too through programs like Parent University, workshops that give parents tools and confidence to help their children grow and succeed. This is what community looks like in SLPS. People lifting each other up, standing together, and making sure no one faces challenges alone. Because when one of us rises, all of us rise. Every student, every day, together like never before. They said pause. And yes, we paused, but only long enough to gather ourselves. They said rebuild, but what we're doing is more than fixing buildings. We're restoring energy, restoring pride, bringing our schools and our spirits back to life. From the halls that carry our history to the hearts that carry our hope. This is us rising again together. This is what leadership looks like here: teachers preparing rooms with care, principals greeting families at the door, staff making sure every detail is right, because our students deserve our very best. The lights are on, the doors are open, and the future our kids deserve is right in front of us. Every student, every day, together like never before. In every spark of discovery, every note sung, every challenge met, you can see what makes our students shine. Some people say kids have potential, but at St. Louis Public Schools, we see their brilliance right now. The scientist building her first robot, the artist mixing colors until they feel just right, the veterinarian caring for man's best friend. They're not waiting for the future, they're creating it in real time. And every step they take, every skill they build, every dream they speak out loud, they do it with teachers, coaches, and families who believe in them just as much as they do. This is what success looks like here: effort, joy, curiosity, and growth, all shining through our students in everything they do. Every student, every day, together like never before. Stop. Every day in every school, you'll see adults making sure students feel safe, encouraged, and ready to learn. Families feel it too through programs like Parent University, workshops that give parents tools and confidence to help their children grow and succeed. This is what community looks like in SLPS. People lifting each other up, standing together, and making sure no one faces challenges alone. Because when one of us rises, all of us rise. Every student, every day, together like never before. They said pause. And yes, we paused, but only long enough to gather ourselves. They said rebuild, but what we're doing is more than fixing buildings. We're restoring energy, restoring pride, bringing our schools and our spirits back to life. From the halls that carry our history to the hearts that carry our hope. This is us rising again together. This is what leadership looks like here. Teachers preparing rooms with care, principals greeting families at the door, staff making sure every detail is right because our students deserve our very best. The lights are on, the doors are open, and the future our kids deserve is right in front of us. Every student, every day, together like never before. In every spark of discovery, every note sung, every challenge met, you can see what makes our students shine. Some people say kids have potential, but at St. Louis Public Schools, we see their brilliance right now. The scientist building her first robot, the artist mixing colors until they feel just right, the veterinarian caring for man's best friend. They're not waiting for the future, they're creating it in real time. And every step they take, every skill they build, every dream they speak out loud, they do it with teachers, coaches, and families who believe in them just as much as they do. This is what success looks like here: effort, joy, curiosity, and growth, all shining through our students in everything they do. Every student, every day, together like never before. When our community faces a storm, we don't wait to help, we show up. That's who we are. From staff delivering meals and supplies, to teachers checking in on students' well being, to counselors helping kids talk through hard days. Support is what we do. And even when the emergency passes, we don't stop. Every day in every school, you'll see adults making sure students feel safe, encouraged, and ready to learn. Families feel it too through programs like Parent University, workshops that give parents tools and confidence to help their children grow and succeed. This is what community looks like in SLPS. People lifting each other up, standing together, and making sure no one faces challenges alone. Because when one of us rises, all of us rise. Every student, every day, together like never before. They said pause. And yes, we paused, but only long enough to gather ourselves. They said rebuild, but what we're doing is more than fixing buildings. We're restoring energy, restoring pride, bringing our schools and our spirits back to life. From the halls that carry our history to the hearts that carry our hope. This is us rising again together. This is what leadership looks like here: teachers preparing rooms with care, principals greeting families at the door, staff making sure every detail is right, because our students deserve our very best. The lights are on, the doors are open, and the future our kids deserve is right in front of us. Every student, every day, together like never before.
I call this evening's monthly work session to order at 6:39 p.m.
In
Ms.
every
Vaughn,
spark of discovery,
roll call.
every note sung, every challenge met,
Dr.
you
Harvey.
can see
Present.
what makes
Mr.
ours.
Hikes.
Present.
Ms. Hubbard. Here. Ms. Jones.
Here.
Ms. Foster. Mr. Marston.
Present.
Dr. Collins Adams. We have a quorum.
I move to approve the agenda for this evening's meeting.
I make a motion to approve the agenda for August 25th, 2026 monthly work session meeting.
Second.
Ms. Vaughn, roll call. Call for a vote.
Dr. Harvey.
Yes.
Mr. Hikes.
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard. Ms. Jones.
Yes.
Mr. Marston.
Yes.
Motion approved.
And can I get a couple of motions to approve the minutes from the last two meetings?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from August 11, 2026 regular business meeting and also August 15th, 2026 work session minutes.
Second.
Ms. Vaughn, call for a vote.
Dr. Harvey,
Yes.
Mr. Heights,
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Marston,
Yes.
motion approved.
We're now to the part that everyone is looking forward to. We've got a report from Superintendent Dr. Berry about Future Ready.
Yes, good evening. First, I'm going to take this moment to celebrate the incredible first day across St. Louis Public Schools yesterday and the second day for today. From the moment our students walked through the doors, our schools were filled with energy, excitement, and a true sense of belonging. Across the district, we saw engaging activities, warm welcomes, relationship building, and most importantly, instruction happening on day one. Our students were not simply getting settled, they were reading, writing, thinking, creating, and collaborating. I want to thank our principals, teachers, support staff, families, our board members, and every member of the SLPS team who helped make day one successful. There is a lot happening across our district, but when our students walk through our doors, our focus remains clear, providing an excellent experience every day, beginning with day one. It was a great start. Now it's our responsibility to carry that same energy and urgency and commitment throughout the year. So thank you. Now we will jump right in to the Future Ready update presentation. Okay, tonight's a work session, so that you'll hear from various members of the group. So please feel free. There is no way that right or wrong way, so feel free to stop us at any moment, ask questions, but we will jump right in. Of course, this is our portrait of a graduate. Sorry, my range might be a little far. I may just need you to help me. On our core four, and we can keep going. Next slide, please. And so we have shared that our recommendation for our portfolio model is an A+ model. It is mainly comprised of our traditional middle schools, high schools, and elementary pre-K through 5. We will share some exceptions today, but this will be our A+ model. Next slide, please. And I hope you can see this slide. We have a few questions that we would like to pose to the board for today. We are asking as we go throughout this process if there are any schools, recommendations, or elements of the current plan that we are presenting that you could not support as it stands. And you can let us know what's driving that concern and share that with us. What make you feel like this is a defensible plan to our families? And what do you think about when families communicate their experience is going to be? Also, the impact of these decisions and what must we hold true? Where do you believe that your differences, if any, they lie? And are the differences primarily about the process or specific recommendations? And what, so, any disagreements do we have? And how do we resolve those? And what student experiences are we trying to protect? What could we do to help change your mind? As far as the level of confidence regarding our plan, what additional information may still be needed after tonight? Where do you believe there is room for compromise or a different solution? And if we were sitting here 3 years from now and agreed that we made the right decision, what would you see from our students and families that told us they got it right? And now we're going to jump right on in. We have Miss Gina Haywood is going to talk about our strategic architecture plan and where we go from here.
Thank you, Dr. Berry, to the board and to the community. Excited to have the opportunity to discuss these items as it's been lots of questions. I'm hoping that tonight will provide some clarity around what the process has been thus far to lead us to this point. So when you think about the strategic context and the two-plan architecture, really wanted to ensure that we were answering kind of a two-piece question or a two-part question. And the first portion of that question would really live in the space of being as a future-ready document, considering the structural sustainability as well as the opportunity for growth and competitive positioning. And so we definitely want to make sure that the district continues to be responsible for what we currently have, but that we also are being mindful about the things that are changing within our city, how we're going to compete at a larger level. So how does SLPS create a sustainable system for the students it currently serves is the question that we have for our future ready structural sustainability. And then for enrollment, growth, and competitive positioning, how does SLPS make those schools compelling enough that more St. Louis families choose them? The core work for both of these, if you're considering the structural pieces, is that we improve our facilities, the consolidation, staffing, transportation, configurations, and district reductions. And then if we're considering about the competitiveness, our market intelligence, what's happening in our region, the product strength and retention, recruitment, family resources, marketing partnerships, and measuring those on a regular and continuous basis. At the onset of this work, the team was really committed to ensuring that we followed a process full of principles that were guided by, our moral compass as well as our integrity and professional knowledge base. And so when I consider the guiding principles that were developed by the team, it was very important to ensure that we would represent the beliefs of the team at large and that they would be the foundation for shaping every decision moving forward. So these guiding principles included creating a high-efficiency anchor sites, student-centered, opportunity-focused design, and you've heard us talk about that in numerous meetings, protecting the foundational conditions for learning, long-term financial and operational facility sustainability, data-informed transparently and disclosed decisions, strengthening our feeder patterns, equity of access regardless of building or zip code, and consistent community engagement. Because we wanted to protect the principles that we outlined, it was important that we also put guardrails in place, the things that we would not do. So we will not prioritize buildings over students, preserve enrollment practices that create inequity, exempt central office or leadership from the efficiency conversation, advance a recommendation without a disclosed data-based rationale, allow site-level autonomy to override district-wide consistency, use test scores as a sole condition for consolidation, or make plans without engaging stakeholders in the process. Some community factors and considerations, and there were many. As already has been stated in other meetings, multiple criteria have been examined while finalizing the recommendation for the board. But some of these considerations that have been considered are effectiveness of school leadership, safety, health, well-being, and walkability, equity across schools regardless of building or zip code. That's occurring many times across this presentation. You'll hear that. Community, identity, trust, and sense of belonging, the number of school options nearby, academic performance trend. You'll hear me speak a little bit more about this later, but it's very important that the decisions that were made, that the receiving school quality would be higher than that of the school that was transitioning, because we want our students to be set up for success, and research says that's the best practice. And finally, proximity to new housing development, parks, communities, and resources. And so now I'm going to ask that Chief Watson would share some information about the developments and plans across the city of St. Louis and within the district that have informed the team.
And while Chief Watson's coming up, just regarding that receiving schools that are performing better, that's for students who are not, when schools are not merging. So when there are schools that are merging, there is no research that says the receiving school has to be performing better. But when there are students that are going to receiving schools individually, not as a whole school, research says that school that's performing better, students seem to do better in that school as well.
Thank you, Dr. Berry. So this slide reflects the district's ongoing efforts to gather and analyze information regarding both current and planned development throughout the city of St. Louis. Through previous work sessions and real estate committee presentations, we have continued to engage with the Planning and Urban Development Agency, SLDC, the Real Estate Development Division, and other community and partners. This information on this slide presents or provides the ongoing data gathering efforts and identifies approximately 90 development projects throughout the city that are in various stages of planning, design, funding, or construction. This information will be an important consideration as the district evaluates future enrollment trends, neighborhood growth, and long-term facility needs. So building on that development activity that was identified in the previous slide, this slide provides a broader look at the city's planning areas and the long-term development priorities that influence future growth. The context is important as we consider the district's long-term facility strategy and the future-ready 2050 vision. So you can see there's an emphasis, particularly on the north side, because of the tornado. So working with our partners from SLDC and a lot of the city agencies, we were able to have weekly meetings or monthly meetings rather, and we get this information so we'll know the phased approach to this work in terms of future development. This next slide shows our current footprint within the city of St. Louis, and as you can see, just the amount of real estate that we cover throughout the city. So this next slide represents the beginning of a long-term vision for the future of SLPS. Our objective is to prepare our facilities not only for the students we serve today, but also for future generations. This vision takes a balanced approach. We anticipate a combination of new construction and strategic renovation of existing schools. So in other words, we're looking how we can effectively mix the new with the old, building modern facilities where needed while continuing to invest in facilities that have long-term value to the district and their communities. Under this proposal, the district could potentially construct 11 new schools and complete approximately 21 major renovations through 2050. This preliminary capital projection represents approximately $1.22 billion in estimated construction costs, with a proposed bond cycle totaling approximately $2.25 billion over the period shown. And in most cases, just from other districts, there's a general cycle of at least 3 to 5 years for bonds and for just to look at the capital improvements for the facilities. So the important point here is that although these numbers should be viewed as a long-term planning framework, this is not a fixed commitment or a predetermined list of projects. Our intent would be to establish a recurring capital planning cycle. We will look at the next 5 years, establish priorities, make the necessary investments, and then revisit the plan. At each cycle, we would reassess critical data points, looking at the facility condition assessment, enrollment and demographic trends, utilization and capacity, academic needs, transportation impacts, neighborhood and city development, financial capacity, and community needs. As these conditions may change, our plans will change with them. This approach allows us to move away from the reacting to simply being proactive and provide a predictable capital strategy. Pass it over to Chief Mitchell.
Okay, before finalizing the methodology and scoring approach, our St. Louis Public Schools Research and Evaluation team reviewed recent school consolidation practices in several urban districts, including Houston, Austin, Atlanta, Boston, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Baltimore, and St. Paul. Across those districts, the same core factors appeared repeatedly: enrollment, utilization, capacity, facility condition, operating cost, proximity, staffing, and receiving school capacity. That comparative review helped confirm the factors that we are considering locally and that they are consistent with our broader practice. We then translated those common factors into criteria that fit the specific conditions and priorities of St. Louis Public Schools. That includes the FCI, building capacity, utilization, student population within the attendance zone, and proximity to St. Louis Public School options. In these next slides, Dr. Haywood will walk through the actual scoring methodology, including how the criteria are weighted and applied at the school level.
Thank you, Chief Watson and Mitchell. So in considering the weighting of these criteria, as was just stated by Chief Mitchell, it really was an industry standard. So when we look at the facility condition index, we weighted that at 25%, building capacity 25%, building utilization 20%, St. Louis Public Schools students living in the attendance area at 15%, and the percent of students attending St. Louis Public Schools that live within 1 mile of the building at 15%. These criteria were scored on a scale of 1 through 5, 1 being a low score and 5 being the high score. For facilities condition index, the lower the score, the higher the rating on our criteria in our spreadsheet. So you'll see here that the facility conditions index ranges from less than 40%, greater than 40%, down to less than 10%. And then with our capacity, we broke it out by elementary, middle school, and high school. So for capacity for elementary school, 300 up to 400 was the scale. Middle school, 400 through 500 was the scale. High school, 500 through 600. For our building utilization, 20% through 80%. And then looking at our enrollment factors of St. Louis Public Schools students living in the attendance zone, we had elementary students 175 down to 400, middle 100 down to 500, high school 200 down to 600, and then our students attending within 1 mile, 20% down to 80%. Here you have an example, because each and every one of our schools were placed into this workbook or this spreadsheet to be rated, which resulted in an overall score that we use to inform decision making throughout the process. Each of the schools will have a scorecard that looks similar to the ones that are in front of you. So we have George Washington Carver Elementary School. You see those factors that we talked about in addition to their current enrollment trends, and then some of the things that are happening that are very specific to that school. Because again, we've used multiple criteria, so this has not been just 1 or 2 data points, but many data points that have informed the decision moving towards the creation of the portfolio that will be recommended. So our proposed portfolio school structure and feeder pattern. There are 5 zones that we've essentially divided the school district into. For zone 1, elementary schools that will be a part of this feeder pattern are Adams, Dewey, Laclede, which will be replaced by the newly built Mitchell by 2029, and Washington Montessori. Our middle school would be Compton Drew, and the anchor high school would be Sodan. In zone 2, Herzog, Lexington, Nance, and Pomosia. Pomosia will be replaced by our newly built Turner Branch by 2030. Middle school will be Yateman, the high school will be Sumner. Zone 3, Jefferson, which will be replaced by the retrofitted Dunbar by 2028. Gateway, as well as Bryan Hill. The middle school would be Gateway Middle, the high school Vashon. Zone 4, Frable, Hodgen, Humboldt, Peabody, Woodward, and Lyon. Middle school would be Long and Carnahan. Siegel would also service students pre-K through 8 in that zone, with Roosevelt being the anchor high school. And in zone 5, we have Mason, Booter, Mann, Oak Hill, Werner, Malamphy. The middle school being Long and Bush, and the high school being anchored by Gateway. Our proposed portfolio school structure for our focus school pathways includes an early childhood pathway that would lead with elementary Sticks, P3 through 2nd, and Wilkinson P3 through 2nd. Special education public separate would be Gateway Michael, kindergarten through 8th, Madison, kindergarten through 8th, with the high school being Nottingham CJA. Visual and performing arts would include Shaw Visual Performance Arts, Carl Lane Visual Performing Arts, and Central Visual Performing Arts. Our advanced academics pathway would include Betty Wheeler and Mallinckrodt, the middle school being McKinley, and the high school being Collegiate School of Medicine and Bioscience, Metro High School, Central VPA, Advanced Academics, or Classical Academy. The title of the school is yet to be determined. And our last pathway would be Career and Technical Education, with the high school being Clyde C. Miller Career Academy, and Gateway High School, which is a hybrid. Important to note that McKinley High School will merge with Central Visual Performing Arts to create a Visual Performing Arts and Advanced Academics focused school, per our proposal. So now I'm going to disaggregate this information further and provide some rationale behind the thinking, maybe a sneak peek into the minds of the individuals on the team, and hopefully clarify some of the questions that have been existing around why, which school, and how we came to those proposed feeder patterns. I also want to acknowledge that I'm going to do a lot of reading to you today, but I want to make sure I'm thorough and also if there's anyone that has a question, that they have the opportunity to surface that question. So in Zone 1, our elementary schools, Adams had an evaluation score from the spreadsheet, from the criteria that we spoke of earlier, of 40%, school capacity of 364. Dewey, evaluation score of 66%, school capacity of 506. Laclede, evaluation score of 69%, school capacity of 338. Washington, evaluation score of 66%, school capacity of 462. The middle schools in the zones, Compton Drew with evaluation score of 85%, school capacity 589, and the high school, Sodan, evaluation score of 67%, school capacity of 1,232. Repurposed schools or transitioning schools in that zone include Hamilton. The evaluation score is 58% with a school capacity of 442. In Overture, evaluation score of 62%, school capacity of 560. It's important to note that Adams was selected over Hamilton due to Adams' lower FCI score. Further rationale to explaining what will happen with those students in that school community. For Hamilton, the transitioning school has an evaluation score of 58%, projected enrollment of 224, the APR landed at 15.7%. The receiving school would be Dewey with an evaluation score of 66%, school capacity of 506, projected enrollment of 305, and an APR of 58.1. And I do believe that our superintendent has already given some background around what that means. For AESM, Louboutin, evaluation score was 62%, projected enrollment 239, the APR is 38.5. The receiving school is proposed to be Compton Drew with an evaluation score of 85%, school capacity of 589, projected enrollment of 411, and an APR of 43.4%. Zone 2, Herzog, an evaluation score of 64%, school capacity of 494, Lexington 65% with a school capacity of 450, Nance evaluation of 78% with a school capacity of 380, Pomosia evaluation score of 62%, school capacity of 378. The middle school, Yateman Liddell, 71% evaluation score with a school capacity of 625, and the high school, Sumner, 79% with school capacity of 1,163. Our repurposed buildings in that zone are Ashland, Hickey, and Walbridge. Ashland with an evaluation score of 44%, Hickey evaluation score of 68%, Walbridge an evaluation score of 61%. Lexington was selected over Hickey due to Hickey's lower school capacity. Important note, the potential build of Turner Branch Elementary and Turner Middle will replace two other buildings by 2030. Drilling down further with the repurposed schools, Ashland has an APR of 43.1%, and Lexington has an APR of 51.1%. The other metrics are there for your viewing. Hickey has a APR of 30.9%, and Lexington has a APR of 51.1%. So in this case, we have two schools transitioning to Lexington. And then for Walbridge, Walbridge has a APR of 47.1%, and Herzog has an APR of 57.9%. Zone 3. Our elementary schools were Gateway with an evaluation score of 69%, school capacity 660. Jefferson, evaluation score of 61%, school capacity of 522. Again, Jefferson will be replaced by retrofitted Dunbar by 2028. Bryan Hill has an evaluation score of 41%, school capacity of 300. The middle school Gateway has an evaluation score of 75%, middle school capacity 645. In the high school Vashon, evaluation score of 69%, school capacity 1,281. The repurposed for transitioning schools are Ames, Carver, Columbia, and Patrick Henry. Ames evaluation score of 50%, Carver evaluation score of 31%, Columbia evaluation score of 57%, Patrick Henry evaluation score of 46%. Bryan Hill was selected over Columbia due to Bryan Hill's key location in the northeast region of the city. So our transitioning schools for Ames, the APR is 44.8%. It's important to note that Ames is currently a magnet school. So the receiving school options that parents will be presented would be the neighborhood school or Shaw BPA. So they would be guaranteed a seat in Shaw BPA if they desire to attend. Carver has an APR of 25.5%. The receiving school, Gateway Elementary, has an APR of 40.2%. Columbia has an APR of 30.6%. Bryan Hill has an APR of 42.6%. And Patrick Henry with an APR of 42.6%. Jefferson has an APR of 51.1%. Zone 4. Our elementary schools are Frable, Hodgen, Humboldt, Lyon, Peabody, Woodward, and Siegel Servicing pre-K through 8. For Frable, the evaluation score was 67%, school capacity of 448. For Hodgen, it was evaluation score of 48%, school capacity 330. Humboldt, evaluation score of 37%, school capacity 374. Lyon, an evaluation score of 60%, school capacity of 300. Peabody, an evaluation score of 44%, school capacity of 336. Have an ink spot short there. Woodward, evaluation score of 82%, school capacity of 459, and Siegel, evaluation score of 57% with a school capacity of 408. The middle schools in that zone are Carnahan and Long. Carnahan has an evaluation score of 76%, school capacity of 483. Long has an evaluation score of 76% with a school capacity of 493. The high school's Roosevelt, evaluation score of 79%, school capacity 1,710. The repurposed or transitioning schools in that zone are Merrimack, Monroe, and Shenandoah. Merrimack has an evaluation score of 31%, Monroe evaluation score of 52%, and Shenandoah evaluation score of 43%. Hodgen was selected over Monroe due to Hodgen's newer building. Humboldt and Peabody were selected due to upcoming housing developments near each of the schools. Long Middle School will serve both zones 4 and 5, so they'll be on my next slide as well. In terms of the merging and transitioning schools, Merrimack, Monroe, and Shenandoah, Merrimack's APR was 40.3%. The receiving school, Frable, has an APR of 48.2%. Monroe has an APR of 42.6%. Frable again at 48.2%. So both Merrimack and Monroe will be transitioning as proposed to Frable. Shenandoah has an APR of 52.8%. And Hodgen has an APR of 64.7%. The high school in Zone 4 is McKinley High School. It has an APR of 76.3%. And then Central Visual Performing Arts with an APR of 51%. And finally, Zone 5. Our elementary schools are Booter, Mann, Mason, Malamphy, Oak Hill, and Werner. Booter has an evaluation score of 72% with a school capacity of 416. Mann has an evaluation score of 48%, school capacity of 322. Mason has an evaluation score of 72% with a school capacity of 459. Malamphy, evaluation score of 71% with a school capacity of 560. Oak Hill, evaluation score of 54%, school capacity of 345. Werner, evaluation score of 71%, school capacity of 414. The middle schools are Bush and Long. Bush has an evaluation score of 57%, school capacity of 405. Long has an evaluation score of 76%, school capacity of 493. And Gateway has an evaluation score of 63% with a school capacity of 1,800. Zone 5 did not have any schools for repurposing or merging. As you can see from the map, this region of the city has the highest concentration of SLPS students. So in total, here's a list of the schools that we propose are merged beginning the 27-28 school year. It's important to note that this number has gone down from 22 to 14. Currently, 11 of the 14 are actual building closures with ongoing repurposing conversations taking place regularly. So in Zone 1, Hamilton will transition to the receiving school of Dewey. In Zone 2, Ashland will transition to the receiving school of Lexington, as well as Hickey transitioning to the receiving school of Lexington. Walbridge will transition to the receiving school of Herzog. In Zone 3, Ames will transition to the receiving neighborhood school or Shaw BPA. Carver will transition to Gateway Elementary. Clyde C. Miller will transition to the neighborhood school. It's important here to note that these sites will stop. Clyde C. Miller, as well as McKinley High School, will stop enrolling ninth graders at the beginning of the 27-28 school year per our proposal. Columbia will transition to the receiving school of Bryan Hill. Patrick Henry will transition to the receiving school of Jefferson. And in Zone 4, Louverture will transition to Compton Drew, Merrimack to Frable, Monroe to Frable, Shenandoah to Hodgen, and McKinley High School to Central VPA. Now I'm going to transition back over to Chief Mitchell.
Okay, there has been significant discussion about charter enrollment and its effect on St. Louis public school enrollment. So what you see here is a map of our proposed schools to stay open, proposed closures, and charter schools in the St. Louis region. Charter schools are absolutely part of the competitive landscape, and St. Louis public schools must compete effectively for families. But this analysis also shows an important demographic reality. There are approximately 35,000 school-age children living in the city of St. Louis. St. Louis public schools, charter schools, private schools, homeschooling, and other educational settings are all serving that same finite population. So our long-term strategy cannot simply be to maintain the same number of seats and assume that enrollment will return. We have to create schools that families actively choose, schools with strong academics, excellent programming, safe and modern facilities, extracurricular opportunities, and strong student supports. That is how Future Ready and our enrollment growth work connect. This does not mean that we accept enrollment loss as permanent. The goal is the opposite. Strengthen the quality and competitiveness of the St. Louis Public Schools portfolio so that we can retain more of the families we currently serve and attract more St. Louis families back to the district. We are now going to transition to the academic portion, unless there's any questions about this, of the presentation. So we'll turn it over to Dr. Henning.
Before we go there, can we stay here?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you all. Just to break up some of the conversation, I'd love to stay on the building part. I'm curious, and thank you for the presentation and the methodology and the way that it's being kind of unpacked. When we go back to the districts compared earlier in the presentation and the repurposing building approach, I'm curious how the other districts approach their disposition pipeline and kind of how their repurpose strategy controlled for blight, and how we're thinking, like, did we learn anything from those other districts that allowed us to think about our current disposition pipeline, what buildings are currently ready to be disposed of quickly, conversations with neighborhood associations that are already experiencing blight, and if we have committed partners to support on blight control. I'm particularly thinking about Cleveland and Atlanta on this more than, I don't know the others as well. So I have a few questions, but I'd love to just start there and hear us talk out what we've learned.
Dr. Berry? Oh, go ahead.
I was actually going to call up our research and evaluation team members. They're going to help answer some of the questions.
And while they're coming up, what we did learn from other districts and what we're also going to do here. What we're going to do here is that, we'll talk about it a little bit later, go off for an RFQ to see what developments could potentially happen in the buildings and what businesses or organizations are prepared to come in. And so specifically Cleveland, speaking with that superintendent, they did reach out to the community to say, hey, what can you help us with in our buildings? And we're able to have that information well before they got to the end to say, okay, now we're transitioning. What should we do? They knew while they were going through the process. But the research and evaluation team. And when they come up, I just want to thank them. I know the board called us on to making sure we were not the only ones looking at this data. And I'll also talk about some other pieces that we have that people have spoke about or shared their input as well. But as soon as we reached out to the professionals about this, they were able to go in and to look at data. And that's why some of the points actually changed, because they provided us with more insight on how it should be managed.
So I will, Colin and Ileana did do a little more of the deep dive into those districts that we've listed. I will say it was not exhaustive, and so
Hello. So that's a great question, and actually we didn't really come across very many schools that kind of discussed what the next steps for some of those buildings that they would be consolidating or closing. So that is, I think, a positive that we're doing, kind of discussing what could be done with the buildings that will become repurposed because of mergers of schools. But for right now, we didn't find any additional research, but it's a good question to continue to look into.
Thank you. While I have y'all, I'm curious if you spent time with districts or in your research distinguishing between like FCI and academic adequacy, because FCI is so weighted, and I get why it's weighted in the way that it is, but it's a snapshot in time indicator. It is not it's not a helpful long-term indicator without a building plan. And this entire second half of this document rests on an academic vision, but the weight does not currently, as I see it, control for the academic adequacy of each building with convergence to labs, needed spaces, all the things that require for high quality education. So I'm just curious to hear kind of like what else is in FCI, or is it literally just that one snapshot? And then where is academic experience controlled for in the weighted analysis?
I have a question before we move on. So for the benefit of the audience, that are our community members, our neighborhood individuals. Let's just explain this a little bit further. We want to, if Dr. Harvey, if you had to break that down into a simpler language, you want to know, and give me a specific question that the audience at a different level would understand.
Yeah, it's a great question. So we want an academic experience that requires a lot of project-based instruction, where children are able to get their hands dirty. And we are going to preserve X building because X building can hold 500 kids. Its ability to hold 500 kids does not tell us anything new about the experience that child gets to have in that building. It does not tell us whether or not they have age-appropriate labs. It does not tell us whether they have increase in sensory experiences. It tells us nothing other than the fact that it holds 500. This is the quality of it when assessed today, and this is how much it'll cost to keep it preserved. So I'm curious, buildings are more than their facility quality. Buildings are moral statements. And what I'm curious to learn is like, what's the moral and academic statement of the building that is bigger than its quality? Is that a little better?
That's a lot better.
Thank you,
because our average community member needs to know what we're actually looking for in your response. Go ahead.
So this was something, am I here? Okay. So this was something that came up when we were discussing with the team about which buildings to choose and what to consider when we're choosing those buildings. So something that's very important, especially when we looked at the differences between K through 5 buildings and K through 8 buildings, is having not only the capacity for that many students, but also facilities for each of those students that are appropriate. So multiple cafeterias we talked about, but also those lab spaces you talked about of age-appropriate lab spaces and things like that. So that's something that's been in consideration. I don't have a solid answer to that, but I want you to know that that has been considered and is something that is continuously being looked at too.
Thank you, Dr. Bear.
And I'll also
Go ahead.
jump in when the research and evaluation team presented to us, one of the things that came up in the research was when a school, let's say they have the same score, right? And what's a determining factor? And so the research that they found did support a school that is a higher performing school. Like if we're going to do a merger, the research showed that if you merge into an already high performing school, whether it's academic high performing, if they have a strong school culture, they're able to retain staff and students, then we have higher rates of success. And so when Dr. Haywood was presenting that and talked about the APR score and that as a consideration for the merger, that is actually why we wanted to explicitly pull that out. I know that doesn't answer the question about labs and things like that, but that was a consideration in looking at it. Now, we didn't put in a qualitative method, right, into the actual weight, but that was a consideration as we looked at the buildings and the mergers and the zones.
Just to stress to Dr. KCA's push, what I can walk away with is it was under consideration, it's in consideration, but it is not in the weighted score that shaped whether or not a building remained. After you nodding, it's like, that's right.
It wasn't
considered, not weighted.
Not in the weighted score, but there are buildings, for instance, that we mentioned, we kept over another building because it was a newer building and it had the capacity to hold those spaces that's being asked. And that's one of the reasons for the future plan to be able to create schools that do that. A lot of our buildings are older buildings, and so we would have to go in and actually develop those spaces. So it wasn't in the weighted, but it was actually considered if they were able to hold certain spaces.
It would stand to reason that the facilities department was actively involved in all of these discussions to be able to determine whether or not a building, we always talk about whether or not schools can be retrofitted for residential housing and in old buildings, it's almost impossible sometimes to do that. But when we're looking at transferring students to another building so that we can provide, and it has a greater capacity to be able to provide the things students need for their education, labs, technology, space, I'm getting a nod that, yes, you were actively involved in that conversation. And when it was time to pull back and say, no, that's not going to work, you did that.
So that is correct. And as Dr. Berry mentioned, to retrofit some of these older buildings, you sometimes pay more just trying to retrofit to put new labs, put some of the new spaces, the technology into these old buildings, these old classrooms. We've moved several labs and trying to renovate labs in the past. We have to think about some of the features and some of the whether it's ventilation. There's other factors that go into just trying to retrofit a space. So all of these were included, even as we did our research. Quite frankly, as part of that 2050 plan that Dr. Berry just mentioned, it includes the newer facilities so that we can accommodate these newer spaces, so that we can meet the needs of these like we have the robotics programs and some of the programs that we have up in our schools now. I mean, when you look at the cost, it's close in terms of what we would pay to renovate or retrofit some of these areas as opposed to building a new facility. But in the overall big picture, in terms of maintenance and the long-term strategy, it's cheaper in the long run to build new facilities with those features to accommodate the 21st century learners, as we calling it, with a newer facility.
Yeah, and I'll hold my questions to my other colleagues. I want to name the reason I'm asking is because if you approach the deck loosely, it will read as a capital strategy, a facility strategy, and an academic strategy. And I'm hungry for, as we get closer to October, the Venn diagram where those three things overlap and we're having a full conversation. That's the only thing I'm trying to tease out is like, I get the capital component that you name, like facilities being at the table, Dr. KCA makes a lot of sense to me, but my question is actually an academic question, not a facilities question. So it's like, where do I see and zone in on like the academics team said they can get what they need for the vision we have for a child 10 years out to be experienced. The facilities team says that we have the capital reserves or at least the right sync strategy to ensure that said building can be preserved. And then the capital overlay says there's enough recurring savings and said, right, at some point, we will have to turn the corner to talk about all of these as one conversation. And I know that this is maybe not there yet, but that's what I'm that's what I'm chasing after, is hearing where all of them land for a clear picture.
Thank you. Board Member Marston?
Got it. Thank you. Did the criteria used to evaluate the elementary and middle schools also apply to the high schools?
So at this time, we were not recommending any additional high schools other than the 2 high schools. Just like when we were going to talk about gifted, we were saving any of those conversations for after we move through this part of the process. So we did not, we worked backwards. We used the high schools as our starting point and what we wanted to do, and moving back from the high schools to how we worked to figure out what schools we would keep.
Okay. And I had a couple of questions about feeder patterns. So Long is a middle school for both Roosevelt and Gateway in this proposal. So is the high school a Long student will be assigned to based on whether they live closer to Roosevelt or Gateway? Okay, so that's easy.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
okay.
absolutely. Yeah, that was an easy one.
Just wanted to clarify. And then I'm trying to understand how Gateway STEM will operate as a hybrid school. So I'm trying to understand how a focused school can also have a neighborhood feeder pattern. Can you kind of talk about that?
I can jump in there. Yeah, we're actually, it functions right now as a hybrid school. So what we're doing is we are polling students from across the district, high school students, juniors and seniors, and they are enrolling in the CTE programming at Gateway STEM High School, while the students there are Gateway students, and they also have seats in those CTE programs as well. So it currently functions as a hybrid. The change would be that it would, rather than being the old term of magnet, it would be a neighborhood school.
I've got a few more, but I'll kick it over to somebody else.
I just have one question. Did we use any teachers' input on the capacities of these schools or anything?
So thank you. We did meet with Local 420, and so what we are going to do, and we'll talk about that later too, have a task force. So at the end of last year, we started working with building principals to ask them, how do you evaluate what the capacity of your buildings could be? So there is a list that they provided. We did 1 or 2 schools to go around to see if the capacity numbers that we actually have are matching up to what principals believe, and also what we thought could be utilized in that building. And so we are in the process of also working with the union and our teachers to have the committee to go around to every single building to confirm capacity numbers.
Ms. Jones?
I think I have some concerns about the way that capacity was figured in, and also I'm trying to understand, first of all, when you talk about Clyde C. Miller being a neighborhood school, would you please explain that a little bit more? Because I had some concerns. I know that we have a lot of our CTE programs there, and it's been touted as, hey, you can go there and you can learn a skill. But I was really hoping over the years that we could expand the youth build component, which has disappeared, perhaps to our elementary, middle, and high schools. And I want to understand, what programs are we currently offering? Because it sounds like we're starting from scratch almost on here. What are we currently offering? It sounds like we're offering pie in the sky right now, but we have some really great programs, and I'm really lost for words right now.
Dr. Henning, feel free to jump in, but yes, the next portion is the academic portion, and we do lay out what programs we currently offer. So Clyde C. Miller would be our CTE school for the entire district. So right now it is serving 9th through 12th graders, and so if you are a 9th through 12th grader, you go into Clyde C and you go into the college exploration or the career field. We're recommending that every high school student that has an interest would be able to spend a day as part of their pathway to go to Clyde C. Miller and return to their neighborhood school. So Clyde C. Miller would no longer be a neighborhood school. It would be our CTE center for the district.
Right, and so that's another concern for me, is that would be the primary, because we have students, particularly in North St. Louis and South St. Louis as well, that need to have those skill sets before they get out of high school, starting at the middle school level. And I remember shaking so many hands during those 11 graduations that I attended and hearing those students talk about where they were going to go to school. They were going to go to Rankin, and I could just see it in their eyes. I was just praying and hoping that they would make it. But it seems that our students need to be job ready when they leave high school, regardless to whether or not they can go to Clyde C. Miller, Vashon, Roosevelt, or what have you, because of the way the economy is right now. Our students in our student life right now they're struggling. And a lot of families are in serious need. And I'm really hoping that you'll also add financial literacy from KG through 12th grade, because to teach our students about money, because so many of our families are really hurting. So when you start doing this reconfiguration and you talk about locating schools in areas where you get the biggest bang for the buck, like in South St. Louis, I saw a lot of blue, but in North St. Louis, there's hardly anything. I drive there daily because it's my neighborhood, and there won't be anything there. I'm trying to understand what are we going to get over there?
Yes, ma'am, and we share the same sentiments, and so that's why we are following the Urban Planning Committee, and we do have, I saw Mr. Roper here, and so we too are building our proposals for the new schools. They were mainly in the areas of redevelopment, and as well as we will share a little bit later how we are going to start younger, going into those CTE programs and have more offerings for the entire district. So we agree with what you're saying.
I just hope the youth bill will come back, because we did have an agreement a few years back and there was no follow through, but it's starting at the elementary school level where we're introducing our young people to the construction trades and CTE.
Board Member Harvey.
Thank you.
Board Member Hubbard, I'm sorry. And then Harvey, sorry.
I have a lot of little questions that I want asked, but my big question is, have we interpreted these changes according to the student transportation issue? Because some of the schools have been magnet schools. Some of them just have students from all over the city coming to them. And so it's not just like everybody that goes to Ames. Well, no, that one was easy because it said you could go to your neighborhood school. But just the idea that we know that there's students change schools every semester, some of them, and that we are busing kids from their neighborhood to a different neighborhood school. And what are we going to do about that? Did we think about that? Because I don't want to keep sending kids out of their neighborhoods.
Yeah, thank you. And that's one of the reasons that we are proposing to go back to the neighborhood school model. When we were able to look at the heat map of where children are attending schools, it was all over the city of St. Louis. And that is one of the ways, now we're talking about how we're going to save on transportation costs. And so when the state does the formula, they take in the efficiency, and that's part of the formula. Right now, our efficiency is not very efficient. And so going back to the neighborhood model will help in hopefully getting more reimbursements for transportation, but also making sure that students are able to go to their neighborhood schools and having a school inside their neighborhood that they would want to attend.
Harvey.
Thank you. I'm curious on the methodology. When APR is noted in the deck, was there a floor score that we were using around like what we would deem as being substantively strong? No. That's fine. I mean, no. I'm just curious.
No, we first looked at all of our schools to see had their APR points increased from 2021 to now.
Okay.
And then as we were looking at merging, we were looking to see if students were going to be moving from a school into one that had a higher APR percentage than the one they were coming from, but we did not establish a base, so to speak.
Got it. And it seems like and I did a quick scan, so forgive me, but it seems like most students move into a stronger-ish APR except for the McKinley CVPA one. That's accurate?
Yes, that is accurate, but McKinley would also have access to CSMB, and so we are able to speak with the principals, and once we are able to get a plan approved, working on how the complex right there with CSMB, McKinley, and CVPA would be able to utilize the IB and AP courses that both, that were offered at McKinley, CVPA, and CSMB.
Got it. And then my last question for this section, and it's an academic question, but I'm using a facility hold for, which is like, based upon the buildings where students would be transitioning, what's the average or ideal student to teacher ratio that can be pulled off in the buildings where students are transitioning? And then is that the ideal that we're aiming for, years from now?
Yeah, I don't know if Beth Davy, I don't see her. Is she here? Oh, there she's in the back. I'm going to call Beth Davy up. And so there are some that really want the standard to be about 17 students. That is not ideal. Originally, we started at 24 students, and we understand that is, to some, that may seem quite high. And so we are now, we have done about 3 different proposals to see how we can meet in the middle and looking to see what does that look like as far as student teacher ratio. So I'm going to let Beth jump in here.
Sure. So for our listening audience, the State Department of Education releases every year a desirable standard and a maximum standard when they're looking at class sizes. So in SLPS, our standard whenever we do staffing allocations is always far below that maximum. For example, that maximum says you can have 40 third graders in a room. I would not personally recommend that. But what we do know is that the desirable standard, that low numbers, that would indicate for pre-kindergartners having up to 20 students in a class with an aide. The desirable standard, what DESE would recommend for kindergarten through 2nd grade, having 17 students in a class. And I really hope I'm not wrong on this, but 3rd through 4th grade would recommend 20, with 5th grade and up going to 22 students per class. The current formula that we are experimenting with, because again, anytime we talk about Future Ready, I know we are also doing this in the context of our budget. But as we're considering all those factors, our goal at this time is to ensure the maximum class size for 3rd through 5th grade at 24, potentially even lower, Dr. Berry, and the maximum class size for K through 2 at 22, which I should mention is lower than our current standard in SLPS.
Thank you, Beth. That's absolutely correct. Right now, our standard is 24. Oh, yeah. And we're posting
I
22.
do have one question about the pupil-teacher ratio. Do we monitor that so that at the beginning of the school year or up to the middle of October, that if we are pretty close to, so for example, I think you said 17-1 in some of your in first and second grade classes, right?
So the 17-1 is the state recommendation.
And you
ours would operate, our current formula says 24-1. As we're looking at Future Ready, we'd like to propose moving that to 22.
22. We have 23 in a class. Then what do you do?
Well, that is usually at the discretion of our superintendent as you look line by line through each school. Based on some schools' capacities, needs, and otherwise supports within a building, a 23-student first grade class may be very doable. But other buildings, based on the individualized need of students in that classroom, teacher capacity, etc., it may be time to add another allocation. So that is where that right on the number, right on that line,
Right.
is where that professional judgment comes in hand.
And when we have witnessed, for example, in a video presentation, and it was the teacher of, I'll just lay it out, it was the teacher of the year presentation, and some of the class sizes are extremely small. How do we avoid having those small classes of at least 10 students and under in some cases?
Yeah, so from my observation, working with staff allocation and ratios here in the district for a few years, the schools where we typically see the student to teacher ratio at the 10 or under, which as a teacher can be wonderful for individualized instruction, but we know that for our effectiveness as a district and our efficiency. It is not necessarily the ideal goal. That is particularly at our schools that have one class per grade level. So we do have several schools in the district, pre-Future Ready, that have under 150 students that oftentimes have one class per grade level. If there are 11 students in third grade, we know that instructionally it can be an opportunity to combine them with another grade level, but we're seeking to protect the academic integrity by still allowing them to be in their own grade level classes.
I think it's important to know that while we're going through all of these changes, that's one of the things that we will be monitoring.
Yes.
And that it's important because it's important to our budget. A largest portion of our budget comes from the teacher salaries. And if we are spreading ourselves really thin, then we're paying teachers to be in a class with minimal number of students. But on the student side of that, peers learn from each other, and it is beneficial to have more students in a classroom. I certainly do not ever expect to have at the capacity, that higher number that you have. But students do learn, and a combination class has never really harmed anyone if it's done right. And you and I both know that we combine the students that are capable of learning at a higher level with the grade above. So
Absolutely, and I think there's opportunities for that everywhere. I think part of our goal with Future Ready is to make sure that there are multiple classes per grade level to, as you mentioned, continue that collaboration between teachers, but also to really build a sustainable school culture where we can offer additional related arts, additional services and opportunities, etc.
Thank you. Dr. Berry?
No, just one. I think you cleared it all up, so thank you.
One question.
Yes, sir.
Do we, with the teachers, do we usually, per child, do we usually follow the contract, the union contract with the school teacher school ratio, teacher student ratio?
So
Yeah, go
to
ahead.
my
We
and
do.
President Cummings, if you're we always follow it, yes, but because the union agreement supersedes all other board policy.
Yes, it does. Thank you. If it's okay. Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, I had just 3 more questions and a couple comments. Try to make them quick. There'd been some talk about having a new gifted center where students could go, no matter which school they attend, once a week to do project-based learning. I was wondering if that's still under consideration.
Yeah, so that's in the next portion of our PowerPoint as well. But no, we will answer that question right now. And so I know we were asked to do a few considerations, and so we had looked at various options. What we are landing on as far as our proposal is to keep the gifted schools as they are, but providing additional supports for our neighborhood schools and students identified as gifted. And we will certainly share that when the PowerPoint comes back up.
Okay, great. And what are the projected cost savings with this proposal?
All right, and that was towards the end. But with this, Beth Davy just left me. I had her also running some numbers regarding staffing. And so I think originally when we had these 17 students, we were looking at about a $16 million savings in staffing. While we know there has been some ask from our local labor unions, as well as just we've been talking about what that looks like. And I know parents have talked about smaller class sizes. Again, we're looking at the 22. So most recently, potential cost savings for staffing, we're looking around 13.6 million. That's a rough estimate, I think she told me earlier. And then with transportation, seeing that we have heard from the community with the original proposal, we're looking about saving about 15 to 18 million. Now we are now looking at what the state requires a 2-mile radius. We are looking at a 1-mile radius for neighborhood schools for transportation, and then looking at a 2-mile radius for those that for our focus schools. Originally we said 4 miles. We heard from parents, and so we're reconsidering and looking at a 2-mile radius now. So with those new reconfigurations, potentially a $10 million savings from transportation. With that, again, the efficiency, you get more money back from the state based off of the efficiency formula. So we are hoping with the new proposal, we will now be more efficient and could potentially get more money back regarding our transportation that can go back into the budget. So with that, I know you're probably adding those numbers. We're looking at about $23.6 million. And I know you're probably saying a $41 million deficit. We're having a budget meeting tomorrow. We did receive more revenue than we expected, which is great. And so, Chief Dobell, please let me know if I say these numbers wrong. We were projected about a $41 million deficit. So last year, we said we were going to spend about $32 million over what we received. So about $350 million we had revenue. We were spending about $366 million. With that and the additional revenues we received, we were looking at about potentially having about $20 million we may come under for this year of spending. So not $32 million, $20 million. It's roughly $12 million dollars less than we proposed. And so with the $41 million, if that $12 million comes off, we're looking about potentially being $29 million over what the revenue we received. So with that, the $29 million, and they have the 23 proposed, what it will save us with transportation and staffing, we're looking at about $6 million that we potentially will be over for the following year, and that we could seriously balance our budget within 2 years.
Thank you. And one of the guardrails is that we won't exempt the central office from the efficiency conversation. What changes are proposed for the central office?
Yeah, thank you. We've already started. So with this year, we are filling our vacancies at the school sites at 100%, meaning if there is a teacher or support staff that leaves us and we need to fill it 100%. Here in central office already it's at 50%. So if there are staff members that are leaving us and that is not a critical position to where someone else is not able to absorb those duties without having to exert themselves more than what they're doing, we are not filling those vacancies. So we are collapsing positions. And so we will make sure that we can provide an overview of what that looks like, but we have not waited till the 26-27 year. We're already starting here in central office, and so there will be about 50% cuts just when we have positions that are no longer being filled with those vacancies.
And two comments. I'm glad to see that the mergers are taking into consideration the APRs of the receiving schools. I think that's important. And I'm also happy to see Bryan Hill remaining open due to its location in the College Hill neighborhood, which is in the northeast area of the city, which sort of previous iterations, there was a little bit of a void or a gap in that area. So it's good to see that filled. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Vice President Marson. That is true. We added about 6 schools back to the list because of that very thing. We have a large city and make sure we're servicing our students.
I have a comment to thank you for what we're doing with our gifted program, and I really appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Oh, Dr. Berry, and the leadership team. One of the things that I've noticed over the many years and the experiences that I've had working with gifted programs, both teaching it at the university level and then running it as a central office administrator, that the identification of students that are potentially gifted or have a larger intelligent quotient, because that's what we use, our IQs, and the capacity to learn, really comes from the teacher's perspective and the teacher's perception of what the child is capable of doing. So if we could gear some of our professional development and what we do with our teachers to be able to identify students that have unique needs outside of those students with disabilities. You know, a disability we can see, but giftedness you can't see. And so one of the things that I'm requesting as a board member is that you go about the additional resources that we're going to provide for other students with an open mind to approach teachers and get them to be able to understand how a child that is exceptional in a different area learns so that they can identify them. Yeah. The child hanging from the rafter sometimes is really the one that's most gifted. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am. That's a great segue, unless Board Member Hubbard had something for us.
I remembered something. Sorry. In the past, we've had kind of the Naheed Chapman pathway, which, you know, you merge off of. But do we have something like that set up in this? Is it going to be in the next slides? Because then I don't need an answer.
No, that's okay. No, we can share now. I don't know if it's in the next slide, so thank you. We were talking about Siegel, that pre-K through 8 school. What we did find is that our families who are new to the country, they prefer to have their students located in one building, and so that's why we picked the Siegel location, because most of our families are living in that area, and so they would be able to go to the Siegel building for pre-K through 8. We're still having the options if they would like to go to another school, and then having the Roosevelt location. Is that correct, Dr. Dino? Okay.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome. If there are no questions, we will jump into academics and hopefully answer some of those questions you had about what we're doing earlier.
Okay, everybody take a deep breath. Thank you all. First, board members, I just want to thank you all for just staying in this work. It's hard work. It is difficult. There is nothing easy about this, and I just want to thank you all for just staying engaged and focused and all the work you're putting in on this. I'd also like to request a taller microphone, Dr. Haywood and I. Okay, so let's get going. We can jump back into the slide deck here. So future ready learning, academics, and there we go. So we started first by saying, to your point, Board Member Jones, we started by saying, let's start with post-secondary. Let's look at where we want our kids when they leave high school. How do they get into a 2-year college, a 4-year college, a training program? How do they graduate with an IRC? How do we move them into something that is going to lead to post-secondary success? So that was the framework that we started with. And what we know is when you work back from there, yes, you have to have the programming at the high school, but you also have to have it at the middle school. And it has to align. And then you have to have it at the elementary school. And you actually have to go all the way back to pre-K. So we want our young folks, our pre-K students, to have those experience, and even all the way down to the the cradle. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by the okay, so let me go ahead and read through our theory of action. If St. Louis Public Schools implements a future-ready plan, then the student learning experiences can be transformed by designing rigorous, dynamic, and engaging opportunities that connect learning to students' interests, aspirations, and the world beyond school, so that students will engage more deeply in their learning, develop greater agency and purpose, and build and apply the knowledge, skills, and experiences reflected in the portrait of a graduate as they explore meaningful pathways for their future. So this theory of action really laid the groundwork for our academic framework that we're going to present to you. So what is the framework? St. Louis Public Schools College and Career Academies. So what you see up here are, we're calling these banners, not to be confused with later you're going to see something that looks similar, but those are badges, and Dr. Dino will explain those when she gets into the nuts and bolts of this. But these banners basically lay out a framework for our entire district. So pre-K all the way through high school. This is the framework that our students are going to experience. Is the microphone off? Or, oh, okay, keep going. Okay, so this is the experience that our students will get. They will start at elementary school. They will be able to have exposure to all of these different pathways, all of these different academies. It will get more focused and more experiences as they, and I know I'm not using all the right terminology, I'm going to leave that for Dr. Dino. And then once they get to high school, that's where it feeds into some of our programming like the CTE, the AP, the IB, those programs. So it's not going to be disconnected. So to your point, Board Member Jones, having a very intentional focus to our academic programming from the earliest age, so our students are able to look as a pre-Ker and say, what does it mean to be a drone pilot? What does it mean to be a nurse? What does it mean to be a sheet metal worker, right? Those are things that our students need to be able to see at an early age and grow into those experiences. This is the framework that we are presenting to you. Okay, so we also listened, one of our board members pointed out to us, we talk about our portrait of a graduate, but how does it tie in? And one of the things that we recognize quickly is that college and career ready really is the umbrella. So what we've done is we've pulled that out as one of the 7 competencies, and we have said that is our umbrella. All of our students will be college and or career ready. Please note, those are not mutually exclusive, okay? And I know that's kind of the old way of thinking about academics. We're moving away from that. So all of these competencies now feed into that, and then that leads into our academic programming. We looked at the Missouri approved career cluster framework. This is what we build our programming for our CTE programs around. And we basically say, what are the careers that our students are going to, or that our region is going to need from our students once they graduate or once they go to a 2-year or 4-year college or some other training program. And so this cluster gets kind of defined and redefined every year by things like the state of the workforce and some of those data points. So we know we are preparing our students for not the careers that exist now, but the careers that are going to exist when they graduate from high school and college and beyond. So one of the key pieces of this is we plan to implement all of our students taking an assessment. This is basically a career self-personality assessment. It's called the RIASEC, and it ties all of our students to their interests and different careers and pathways that they're interested in. So our students, even our babies, right, the pre-Kers, maybe we use pictures and that type of stuff. We have students start to identify what are my strengths? Am I a doer? Am I a thinker? Am I a creator? What are some things that I'm really good at? And what careers are associated with those characteristics? Now, these are not static. These things change, right? Because when I was in 2nd grade, I wanted to play basketball for the Detroit Pistons. Turns out they didn't want me, okay? So my interests and my characteristics and what I thought I was going to be changed over time. And so what this model allows us to do is to let students learn what they want to be, but also learn what they don't want to be. That's a really important lesson. I would venture a guess that most of you, the job you have is not the very first job you ever had in life. It probably is not. You probably had a different job, and then you moved into something else because you said, I don't want to stand on a ladder and paint houses. That was my journey. That was my realization. During the summer in St. Louis, I said, I'm going to a 4-year college because it's hot out here. And so part of what we do is we learn as we go along, and that's what this model does. So this is part of what we want to implement, is this RIASEC model, and to build a lot of our programming and experiences around that. Okay, and at this point, I'm going to pass things off to our Chief of Schools, Dr. Dino.
Thank you, Dr. Henning, and I'm much shorter, so I need to move the microphone down. So, as you heard Dr. Henning say, we need to think about what our student experience looks like from pre-K all the way through 12th grade. We want students to have support in their interests, so we think about it in kind of 3 buckets. In the elementary, we're going to think about exploring things. In the middle school, we're going to think about experiencing things. And in the high school, we're going to think about engagement. And so think of those as the student trajectory. It is important that all learning experience support interest and choice within a framework of high quality and rigorous core instruction. We need all students to be reading on grade level, meeting and exceeding state standards, and within that being able to explore what are things I like to do, what are things that might be of interest to me. We will be introducing RIASEC, career exploration, through our School Links platform, which we already use 6-12. We can bring that all the way K through 12. So we're talking about ways to have a coherent experience for students and families, because families have access to School Links too, and right now we have almost 80% of our 6th through 12th grade families who are actually going on School Links and seeing what their kids are doing. We can do that also down to the elementary school. We're not going to forget either about the student and family supports, because those things are really important in undergirding what happens in our schools, how we can provide community resources to families. As Dr. Henning shared, we will be talking about some badges. Through our portrait of a graduate, in our current curriculum frameworks that we share with teachers, we point out exactly where the portrait of a graduate connects, What we will provide for students is the opportunity for them to show us and demonstrate how they're learning and growing. Throughout elementary school, they can earn Explorer badges. They can show they are a change agent through school or community actions or activities. Being a communicator, doing college and career interest presentations. We saw some really great college and career interest presentations for RISEC when we did a visit to a school in San Diego. That's something that we could bring and incorporate here. How are we collaborators? What does project-based learning look like? All of our schools host STEM fairs every single year. How are we helping students see that that makes them good collaborators, good critical thinkers, communicators, etc. As students move into middle school, while we continue the core of a high-quality instructional experiences, they are further developing their career knowledge. We're introducing computer science, digital citizenship. At the end of 8th grade, every student has to complete their ICAP anyways. We know that if we can get them excited about the things that they're doing in school, and we can connect to them with rigorous and relevant experiences, when they choose that high school, they're going to be able to choose one that's a best fit for them. We've been talking a lot about how we're moving towards a neighborhood model, and it is important that all of our neighborhood schools provide a breadth and depth of experiences for students, because when they do choose their high school and ultimately what their pathway will be, we want them to have had a lot of options to begin with so they know just all of the things that are out there for them. In middle school, they can continue to earn portion of graduate badges. This time they're experience badges. What are the experiences they're having and how are they showing and showcasing their attributes as portrait of a graduate. And finally, they'll be choosing a high school and ultimately choosing a banner. Which academy is going to be the one that is going to help set them up for the future that they choose? Regardless of that academy choice, all students will continue to have strong connected academics. In high school, they're going to get to participate in specialized coursework. It was key also for them and students to build meaningful partnerships and relationships within and across our community, whether that is through internship experiences, whether that's through industry exposure, work-based learning. Ultimately, we want students to leave high school, as Board Member Jones says, career ready. They can earn those industry recognized credentials. They can get credits through dual enrollment. Again, this is about students having options and choice, and our district having been set up for them from the start to provide them with the foundational skills necessary so that they can accelerate all of their learning. At the end of high school, we know that students participate in volunteer and community service. They earn those industry recognized credentials, participate in dual credit. We want every senior to be able to participate in an internship. That's every last one of them. We know that they are taking all sorts of assessments, right? They take end of course exams, they take the AccuPlacer. Students in AP classes take AP tests. Students in IB classes take the IB test. How are we going to celebrate each of those milestones along the way? Because again, the goal is for all students to set themselves up for the future that they choose and have the skills and strengths necessary. This particular slide, you can see all of the academies in which CTE or other pathways are mapped to them. I want to note a couple of things. Unless they're otherwise noted, the pathways are available to students in all schools. And yes, we will be providing transportation to students who need to go to their CTE class if it's at a school that's not their neighborhood school. I also want to note students may access programming from multiple academies. You will see on here that we have the Advanced Academics Academy, Early College Academy, dual credit. Those are also available to students who are taking business management as a pathway or in the STEM Academy. While students choose an academy, and that's the major banner under which they will be learning in high school, we are not limiting their choice and saying, sorry, you made a choice at 14, you don't get to change that or add to it. It is important to us all throughout the way that students and families have choices, because as their interests change, we want to make sure that we still have something that works for them. I'm going to switch past, that was really fast, I know we've been sitting here a long time, into our gifted education programming. As Dr. Berry shared, we'll maintain Betty Wheeler and Mallinckrodt and McKinley as our gifted schools. We will also continue to have our gifted itinerant teachers who are already assigned all over the district for gifted students who choose to stay in their home schools now, and they will receive pullout.
What we will be beginning to do in 27-28 is providing instructional extension opportunities for some of our students who may not have met the gifted criteria but have met other thresholds or show particular interests at their schools. Also, during the 27-28 school year, we'll be doing a review of our gifted program structures for implementation in 28-29. That might include things like cluster classroom assignments in schools. It might include various project-based learning tiered supports from gifted specialists across the schools, or even changes to our instructional delivery. All of that won't be done in isolation. We will have families and staff who will be key members of our review team. Thank you.
I refuse to adjust the microphone. I'm just tall enough to reach it. So I will be before you about the shortest amount of time tonight. We really just have one slide to share with you, but we thought it was critically important to mention. We recognize we've been having lots of conversations about, capital this and financial this and academic things like that. We also want to make sure that it's not lost on us that there's going to be a lot of social and emotional impact that's going to happen from these consolidations. So we wanted to make sure that the public was aware that we are keenly aware of those things, and we already have resources and strategies in place to make sure we're addressing those with our constituents. So not just our students, we do have people in place, we have partnerships in place, we have our social workers, and although the graphic that you see says social work, just know that we are intimately working and collaborating with our counseling staff. Although they are in the academics department, we collaborate often. So those trainings that they go to around all the trauma informed and all of those things, they're participating in those together. So they are aware, they're ready, they stand ready, they're receiving training and things like that about how to have those conversations. Sometimes we don't necessarily realize that when we have students that we deal with on a regular basis, some of our students who are in transition, some of our students that's been the only school that they've ever known, some of our teachers that's been the only school they've ever taught at. So those things are going to bring some feelings that's going to surface with some of those individuals that they may need to talk through, they may need to work with somebody, they need to better understand. And so we're just trying to help them understand the process and the better picture about how it's going to make just a better district for all of our students at the end of the process. But we know that sometimes the transition through the process may need a little more support. Additionally, for our staff, it's not just our students who are going to feel the impact or who are feeling the impact and voicing their opinions about the impact. We understand that our staffs are also having some feelings, some residual feelings about, again, the fact that they've been tied to some of these locations for a long time. They've seen these locations in their neighborhoods. And so it's important for us to recognize those things as well. So you'll hear us talk about more from the Student Support Services lens about how we're planning to address all of those things, the resources that we're providing. When you saw Dr. Dino's slides, and every slide from elementary to early childhood to middle school, she talked about those family and student supports. And the Student Support Services Department stands ready with all of those academic departments, everything from culture and climate to our nurses and health services, to our social work, counseling, to recruitment, all the things that fall into having a well-resourced district. We'll be ready and prepared for our constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Thank you, Dr. Dino.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm turning it back over to Dr. Beard, who's going to give us some next steps and some additional information.
Thank you. And then just finally, for those of us that may have seen the PowerPoint, just some next steps. We're going to talk about, again, our transportation analysis and what that's going to cost, additional staffing analysis, and then on-site support, providing that transition teams. And so what we did learn from other school districts that did this work, that when they had transition teams that went around to each individual school, it was comprised of community member, teachers, and also staff to work with the school on how and what transition looked like. They were more successful. So we will have transition teams once the plan is approved. And then budget projections. We know ideally we would like to do 5-year budget projections. And so it is our hope that we would do budget projections once we get closer to figure out how much we actually are going to spend. And then having focus groups with individual stakeholders. I mentioned the RFQ process with the developers and a communications and marketing plan, because while we are talking about what we are doing with our schools, how amazing our schools are, we want to bring families back home. And so it would be a dual approach about enrollment and coming back to St. Louis Public Schools. So thank you, and that concludes our presentation.
I have one question, if you don't mind. And this will be for Dr. Henny. Back to the academics. On the CTE aspect, we do a very good job of getting our kids prepared for college. Now, when you prepare them in the CT class, okay, so to speak, we can teach them how to miter a piece of wood. But how are we going to transition from cutting that miter wood when you become a senior into getting into the trades? Because that's a totally different avenue. So we must find a way that, yeah, we can maybe have a class where they can learn how to wire a board, but how are we going to help them get into Local 1? We got to, the high school counselor is going to be, as a district, we need to get in contact with all the local unions. Because if we can show our kids how to do it, but if we can't navigate them through to get to that union, then we kind of, we're helping them, but not really helping them. So, and that's more of an informational purpose, I guess, so we can figure out a way to get the kids who take those CTE classes, who want to be a carpenter, electrician, sheet metal worker. So we have to get a relationship with those unions, so it's easier for them to navigate when they graduate.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. As you know, it has been hard historically to do that, for a number of reasons. It's very expensive, some of those programs, to have those facilities in our schools. But one of the other issues has been historically they just have not wanted students coming straight out of high school. That's changing now. And so what is happening now is the unions are saying, we will take graduates and we want them to start working right away, and we'll train them on the job. We'll do apprenticeship programs. We'll pay them and have them work. And absolutely, I think that is something we're navigating, looking at how do we prepare our students to be successful going into that. And to your point, those partnerships are key. So, we do have some increase in those areas. We have a partner right now that is working with us around like data analysis, and it's not one of the more traditional unions, but it's kind of connected with some of the sheet metal, and they are doing just that, building back those programming all the way to middle school. So our students, you can't just start them junior year and say, okay, we're going to get you ready to go out into the field. Now somebody's going to hurt themselves doing that. We need to start early on and give those kids experiences so they are prepared when they graduate. So I thank you for that.
Yeah, and even like ranking, if we can, just like our kids get scholarship to colleges, if there a way we can find a way they can get a scholarship to ranking, because, I mean, sometimes you do just have to go to school, and I understand that. So we just got to give our kids every opportunity possible. I'm sorry. Thank you, Dr. Henry.
Yes, sir.
Can I piggyback off of him? I think it's important in all these academies, which, being from the South, that's not a good word to me, but that's okay. When we do leadership, entrepreneurship, and business, and or maybe human and public services, I feel strongly that while we're training leaders, we also need to be providing students with examples of what being a worker looks like, how you can organize your workplace, and those sorts of things, so that they can, not everybody wants to run a business, but they do need to be able to argue for better working conditions. And so I don't know where that fits in, but I feel very strongly that needs to be part of what we're doing, because that's one of the things that makes a strong workforce and a strong city.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Excellent point. It fits in, and we cannot leave it to chance. We actually need to be strategic and intentional about this, and that's what this plan is building out a framework so we can say, to Dr. Dino's point, we're going to have students who have digital portfolios. We're going to have students who at every single critical year, right, where they're moving from 5th grade to 6th grade, they're graduating with a portfolio in some kind. So we're already recognizing those things early on. But again, I think that intentionality is critical. Thank you.
Board Member Jones and then Harvey.
Okay, real quick, guys, there are two things. I remember taking a trip with the school district and the union to Chicago and we went to visit a community school. And what was exciting when we went on this trip was that they had all type of informational brochures and all kind of displays in the hallway that were very encouraging, that talked about drone programs, that talked about how to be an entrepreneur, that kind of thing. And I've been to some of our schools as well, even the Gateway High School, and you can see the enthusiasm in the hallway. But if a student is going to school every day and the hallways are blank and they don't see those, then there they are. They don't understand the opportunities that they could have. And the second thing is that's concerning is we talk about career training and that kind of thing, but entrepreneurship is so important. And I'm gonna be quick about this. I remember my family gifted me a trip to Thailand, and it was very interesting. The interesting thing was the little children that were creating things right there on the street. They were making belts. These were little children. They don't have food stamps. They don't have any of that. So they had to make their money off of their own basic skills right there on the street. They were making little things out of twigs, which were very beautiful and sellable. They were making all type of books and that kind of stuff. But the thing about it is they were becoming self-reliant early. And I feel like a lot of our students, what bothered me when I was watching students graduate, is that a lot of them were not going to be able to be self-reliant because the community that we live in now, people don't really care. I'm just being real about it. A lot of people are suffering. We have thousands of people who are homeless and don't have anywhere to go right this very evening, and thousands of families that don't have anywhere to go. So I feel like we need to stop this thing about just saying, okay, when you graduate, you can do this and that. Some of our students need to come out. They could be tailors. They could make shoes. They could do all kinds of things before they graduate. So I'm hoping that entrepreneurship really will be one of our major goals for our students, to give them opportunity to be authors. Like our young lady down here, she has a very, Miss Smith, she has a wonderful book collection. And many of our students can write their own books. So that's just an example. Entrepreneurship should be one of our major focuses. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Jones. Board Member Harvey.
Sure. I'm going to hand out my questions and then do with them as you please. I really appreciate the theory of action as a frame, and I think it helps to set the right sail for the academic future. Where I have a question, though, is about the lack of measurability of it as a theory of action, and that as a base standard for them. Because the vision that it sets is, quote unquote, engage more deeply, quote unquote, develop greater agency, quote unquote, purpose. None of the three which are measurable. And so, as a theory of action, as a board member, I guess what I would love to know before we crystallize the next version of this deck is like, what 2 to 3 indicators the board is going to be able to see and track in the theory of action to know that it's workable. And not the longitudinal stuff, graduation rates, job placement, but like, what are we keeping our eye on for such an aspirational paragraph? That's kind of my first. The second is, I have a very complicated relationship with career academies. I want to name that up front. I honor CTE models fundamentally, but this banner badge framing is like really doing something to me, because what I've not seen yet is the safety mechanism where we don't resort children by race and economic exposure. Holland's model of RIASEC used white middle-class children who had high exposure to define quote-unquote interest. And interest is like coded language for the things I've been exposed to know if I'm interested in it. We aren't controlling for that. So I have a wrestling with I'm 5 years old with limited social exposure by economics, and then you want me to figure out my interest, even if it's by pictures. But what we know from all the research is that, like with literacy, if a child has never seen a mountain, they will wrestle with the passage about a mountain because they've not exposed to said thing. And so where I'm struggling a bit and would love some unpacking in the future, not right now, is the fail-safe for not using newer, brandable language for another resorting of children? and that's a deep fear of mine. And I've seen districts and colleagues fall into, you get a cord and a badge and a this for the thing that just ultimately looks the same the next May. A bunch of children who have economic exposure have all these badges and cords and things, and then there are children who don't. So I get this, but I read this as a destination. I do not read this as a map of how it gets pulled off with equity. That's where I'm struggling. And then my last piece I'll offer is the gifted education program piece is interesting at best to me. Because it feels like it creates this like waiting room thing over here. And what I don't see is like the deeper critical work of like how are we just rewriting the rules of screening, identifying, the actual instruction itself. And so like there was a celebration of sorts for keeping it. I do not share that celebration at all. I find this to be begin like pretty language for, and these kids who did not meet our screening thing will get this thing over here in the waiting room until we can figure out do you meet this thing over here. And I think that's a really poor celebration for a 78% Black student district. And the percentage of the students who get access to gifted programming don't look like that 78%. And so for us to create this like lesser thing that we are showing as like proposed programming because parents have been loud about it, I just find deeply problematic. And I think it's playing it exceptionally safe because the parents who get to be loud, I'll go back to my second point, have economic exposure and the capacity to be able to be loud. And we gave into that. And so I want to name that the current programming being kept is given into people who have time and space, and it ignores justice and equity. And as a Black-bodied educator, I have deep issues with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Hubbard, give us a second. Any others? I do want, pardon me?
I can go last.
I do want to, since I was one that did celebrate, and I do respect everyone's opinion, thank you, Dr. Harvey. But having worked in a district that was 98% African American and starting a gifted program, I knew how valuable it was to be able to identify students that were at a higher level than the average student in the classroom to be able to meet their needs. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to Board Member Hubbard, and then the superintendent. Thank you.
I was just gonna say, I strongly agree with Dr. Harvey, except for the black-bodied part. He said everything better than I could, but a 98% Black district that works out a gifted program is not the same as what's happened here, which, like, the history of it is connected to the desegregation agreement and the way that we don't have teachers identifying children. We have parents preparing 3.5-year-olds to take tests. And that, I know we've done a lot of work, Ms. Mitchell, I hope it's still happening, to make that process less biased. But still, many tests are, like you said, based on white middle-class people. They're not made for children of different cultures. I want every student to get the education that they need, but I fear that many of the gifted parents have expressed to me in emails that they have the capacity and the willingness to go elsewhere. Right. And the rest of our students may not have that option, and they deserve everything that children at gifted schools receive. And, I mean, from my personal experience, this is N=1, not generalizable. My children they all went to their neighborhood elementary school as gifted students. We were asked when they first got tested, why don't you go down there? And I was like, that's 20 minutes away. I'm not doing that. We're not a morning family. But it meant more warmed me to have my students at a place that there was a whole lot of love and they got to be together. And they transitioned fine into the gifted middle school, except for the fact that they didn't know anybody because all the other kids came from the same two schools. So I added on some, but
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Berry.
Okay, I know you asked for a few of these later, but I would be remiss if I didn't answer some of these. So one, we did not give in. Gifted schools was not on our original proposal because it's an overhaul of more than just what gifted looks like. The gifted instruction that's taking place inside schools, it needs to be better. So it's more than just moving a school. It's about redoing the entire program. We also are providing gifted instruction currently for students in their neighborhood schools, and we're just going to make sure, so it's not, we're not going to provide just something extra for those in the neighborhood schools. You will get the same type of gifted instruction. Actually, those itinerant teachers are really doing what gifted instruction looks like right there in the neighborhood, even more so than what happens inside of the gifted quote-unquote schools. Also, and we had McKinley. McKinley was on the list, and we all know how vocal our parents at McKinley have been, but McKinley is still on the list. We have the interest, you talked about what does that look like for exposure when it's younger. And so we are now starting, I know the chords and the things you mentioned, but we're starting in the elementary school, which we haven't done in the past, so we'll make sure that we share what that actually looks like in that exposure. And then it was one more about the board member, Jones, thank you. We share the same excitement that we were seeing around this model. We've done quite a few extensive research over academies, so it'll be great to kind of hear why the academies are triggering or what that looks like, because before we did this approach, we actually did research for school districts that have done this and have done it well. So I'll be glad to hear. And then the last thing to Board Member Hikes, we have Tran, Corrigan Clark, and I don't know if it's Amoresco, I'm saying it wrong. They actually are, we charged them and said, hey, if you're gonna do work with SLPS, we need to see how you can also support our students. And so what they did, they're providing internships for our students right now while they're working with us. They're also providing scholarships. Corrigan Clark providing scholarship for a student, and they are guaranteeing them a job. So when we put a call out to them, they responded. So we're putting a call out to the unions because truthfully, Dr. Henning was very kind. We've been trying to work with them. They're not hiring our children. So we're putting a call out to them to hire our children. Okay. Thank you.
One other note, Board Member Jones, there are community schools in Springfield that Dr. Berry and I did visit, and we weren't able to make the Chicago trip. It's absolutely amazing, and so some of the things that you saw, I do know that we can start that because it started in their middle schools too, with all the literature and the things that you had mentioned. So I do believe I see a path for us to be able to do that, and I'm proud of the steps that we're taking right now. So we're ready. Board Member Barson, I'm sorry.
One way to help address the valid concerns that Dr. Harvey and Ms. Hubbard raised about the district's gifted program is ongoing focused recruiting to identify students who might not otherwise apply. And just as a overall comment about the college and career academies, I think the effort going into planning the college and career academies shows that Future Ready really isn't just about closing schools. It's an ambitious vision that evinces the audacity of hope, and our students deserve that.
Well, thank you. Are there any additional comments? Board members, leadership? Thank you. Well, that was good. Well, we now move to our next section of our agenda, the consent agenda. The consent agenda is voted upon in its entirety. We have items 5.1 through 5.8. And any board member may ask to have an item removed on the consent agenda to be voted on separately. Is there a motion on the floor?
Let's see, there's a total of 18 actually consent agenda items. I think you were just looking at the first section maybe.
No, I said, oh, I'm sorry, 5.18. Yes.
I can go ahead and make a motion, and we can do discussion after.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Unless anybody wants to remove something from the consent agenda.
Any items removed? Board Member Marston.
Okay. I move to move consent agenda items 5.1 through 5.18 to the agenda for our next regular session.
Second.
Discussion? Board Member Marston.
Yeah, just on item 5.15, which is the Missouri School Boards Association Consultant for Finance. How many open positions in our finance department need to be filled before we're able to handle the work without outside help?
I'll let Chief Dobell come in, but this is not so much of helping with the daily responsibilities. It was coming in based off of the audits that we had. So, Chief Dobell.
Yeah, currently we have 5 open positions in our department. One of them being leadership, and to address some of these audit items, it has been very helpful.
Additional discussion? Call for vote.
Dr. Harvey,
Yes.
Mr. Hikes,
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard,
Yes.
Ms. Jones.
Is this vote for the consultant or for the?
Is to carry all of the agenda items over.
Yes.
Mr. Marston,
Yes.
Dr. Collins Adams.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Items for discussion. We have item 6.1, the tax rate hearing request. Dr. Berry?
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to turn it over to Chief Dobell. She's going to present to you and ask, and we are requesting from the board tonight if you would approve us to start our hearing for our next board member meeting at 6:00 p.m. In the hearing, we do have to present the current tax rate and allow the public to come up and ask questions. So we'll be asking you to allow us to start that at 6 p.m. during the next board meeting prior to the board meeting starting at 6:30. Chief Dobell.
I have a couple slides in the presentation. They're in the document. 2 slides.
He said he's not seeing. That's okay. We can still ask the board.
That's
yeah.
fine. I'll just go through it. They're basically 2 informational slides. Every year, we have to present a tax levy to our taxpayers. We have policy DC that talks about taxing and borrowing authority and limitations. So as a political subdivision, we are authorized to levy a tax rate based on our assessed valuation. These tax levies are approved on an annual basis to provide the funding for general operations and our debt service requirements that we have as a district. We have to propose those tax rates and submit them to the city and the state auditor by October 1st every year, and then they certify those rates. So how that process works, we get notification of the final assessed valuation from the city after Board of Equalization. That's typically late August, early September when we get our final numbers. This is not a reassessment year, so we don't anticipate any large increases in our assessed valuation. Once we get those numbers, we go on the state auditor's website. They basically look like tax forms, and we calculate that rate. So it goes through the state auditor in that manner, and then we get our tax rate. We post our hearing notices, typically 7 days prior to the it has to be 7 days prior to the hearing. So then the board conducts a hearing where public can be heard on any concerns they have about the rate, and then that's typically before your normal meeting, and then during the meeting, we would approve the levy and set the levy. Then I take all those forms, I take them down to the city, get them certified, they send them off to the state auditor, and we get final certification. So that's what that process typically looks like. So I'm here tonight to ask that we set that tax levy hearing on the 22nd at 6 p.m., a half an hour before our normal meeting would begin.
between our, yeah, go ahead. No. Okay, yes, go ahead. Thank you, I'm sorry.
I move to hold our tax rate hearing on September 22nd at 6 p.m.
Second.
Call for vote.
Dr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Heights?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marston?
Yes.
Dr. Collins Adams?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Section 7, items for information. 7.1, the April 2026 credit statement. 7.2, the May 2026 credit statement. That information is available. Just click on the link. Section 8, items for action. 8.1, acceptance of funds for Washington University for CSMB. Accept a donation of $2,000 for the CSMN HOSA. What is this program? I have to click on the.
Is Erin Kane here?
Over there. There she is.
Hi, good evening. Yes, so that is a check that was made out to CSMB from WashU for the HOSA program.
The what?
HOSA?
Okay.
Dr. Hunting, can you?
Health Occupation Students Association.
Thank you. I just needed to know what the acronym stood for. Is there a motion on the floor?
I move to approve item for action 8.1.
Second.
Discussion? Call for vote.
Dr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Heights?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marston?
Yes.
Dr. Collins Adams?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Item 8.2, authorization of community partners, Stray Dog Theater. Authorize the district to enter into renewals for MOU for no-cost programming and services in a form of substantially similar to the form attached, and there is a link attached in our agenda. The partner will provide after-school program 5 days a week at Shenandoah.
I move to approve item for action 8.2.
Second.
Discussion? Call for vote.
Dr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Heights?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marston?
Yes.
Dr. Collins Adams?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Item 8.3, acceptance of funds, the Missouri Department of Conservation for McKinley. Acceptance of $315 for McKinley field trip to the August Anheuser-Busch Conservation Center. Schools applied for the grant.
I move to approve item for action 8.3.
Second.
Discussion? All right, call for vote.
Dr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Heights?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marston?
Yes.
Dr. Collins Adams?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Item 8.4, donation log. Accept the gifts under $5,000, both in kind and cash, listed on the donation log.
I move to approve item for action 8.4.
Second.
Call for vote.
Dr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Heights?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marston?
Yes.
Dr. Collins Adams?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Item 8.5, policy DLCA travel expenses.
I move to approve item for action 8.5.
Second.
Discussion?
I did have a question on that.
Yeah.
So have the administrative procedures for travel been shared with the full board? Or am I think they've been presented at a governance committee meeting, but I don't know if they've come to the full board.
They were listed on the June 9th agenda, and it was a vote to move those off. So this is the second time it's coming back to the full board.
Additional discussion? Board Member Heights, no? Call for vote.
Dr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Heights?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marston?
Yes.
Dr. Collins Adams?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Item 8.6, the June 2026 Consolidated Check Register.
I move to approve item for action 8.6.
Second.
Discussion? Call for vote?
Dr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Heights?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marston?
Yes.
Dr. Collins Adams?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Item 8.7, July 2026 Consolidated Check Register.
I move to approve item for action 8.7.
Second.
Call for vote?
Dr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Heights?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marston?
Yes.
Dr. Collins Adams?
Yes.
Motion approved.
If there are no additional items, we now move to that glorious time of the evening.
I move to.
Board Member Hubbard?
I want to recognize that board member AJ Foster is not here because she was accepting an award from the Boys and Girls Club. Is that right?
Yes, from the Boys
And
and Girls.
so we're very proud of her.
Yes.
And then additionally, I wanted to acknowledge that Dolly Parton died today, and she was a tremendous advocate for education. Besides all the wonderful music and stuff, we lost a giant today, and I'm sad.
Thank you,
That's
Board
all.
Member Hubbard. Thank you. I appreciate that. Are there any other announcements? Call for motion?
I move to adjourn this evening's monthly work session.
Second.
Call for vote?
Dr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Heights?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marston?
Yes.
Dr. Collins Adams?
Yes.
We are adjourned at 8:41 p.m.
And the board says?